Hello, and thank you for tuning into this video. As you can see, instead of just my blank sketchbook in front of me here, I have my latest creation, one of the junk journals I made for my Etsy shop, and a little stack of papers out of which I'm going to make my next junk journal. I thought I would do a little flip through and share with you my latest crafting passion. And of course, that's the same thing that I did in my last video. My last video, if you haven't already seen it, is a flip through of a junk journal that I made and that I've called Temple Tour of India, because that little journal is filled with postcards and receipts and other ephemera that I kind of collected during my various trips to India. One of the comments beneath that video was a request to kind of talk more about the various people who I met in temples in India. And so I'm kind of taking that as my speaking prompt for today. Not that I ever really need one. Usually I'll set my camera, I'll get ready to draw or to share a craft, and then just whatever random stuff has been on my mind starts coming out my mouth. I guess they call that the gift for gab. It can be a gift, it can be a curse, because sometimes I get derailed and start talking about things I didn't mean to. But anyway, yeah, so today my speaking prompt is to talk about the people who I met in India. So I'll flip through this journal in a little bit. Right now I'm going to just start drawing and talking while the subject is still fresh. So it's not going to be my usual sketchbook drawings for a coloring book today. Today I'm drawing with a gold pen on a blue envelope, a really dark navy blue envelope, which is going to be the cover for the next journal that I make. And yeah, you'll see more what I mean about making this into a journal cover when I'm ready to show you my other journal here. So regarding people I met in temples in India, it's such a cool question because it's because of a person I met in a temple in India that I even made the Temple Tours of India junk journal. There was a temple that I visited. It was actually Dakshineshwar in Calcutta, the Kali temple where Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was historically the priest. And while I was in that temple, actually in queue for the darshan, like waiting in line to see the deity of Kali, a man walked up to me, an Indian man dressed in, the traditional, what you expect to see somebody wear in a temple, the dhoti, which is like the men's lower cloth skirt, like the male equivalent of a sari. And he struck up a conversation. He asked me why I was there, what had brought me to India, whether or not I'm a devotee of Kali or if I'm just kind of a tourist. And I told him that when I was a kid, like when I was 13, I did a meditation in my bedroom to overcome my fear of the dark, and that I had seen a vision of Kali, that she had appeared to me and helped me overcome that fear. And, as we got talking, he told me about some of his experiences with deities, and that specifically the form of Kali in Dakshineshwar had appeared to him, and that's why he was there as a temple pilgrim. And it was a really cool conversation because he didn't have any sense of skepticism at all about the experience I shared with him. And also he was so, I don't know a better word. I don't want to say nonchalant because that sounds like a disrespectful thing. I'm just going to put a napkin between the layers of this envelope so I can see where the flap ends as I blab about this. But as I was saying, this man, he was neither skeptical nor impressed. He just took it as a flat reality. And that was so refreshing, because sometimes when I share my experiences of, visions of deities or mystical encounters, people seem wowed by them. And that kind of solidifies the fact that most people don't believe that these things are possible. Anytime you hear about somebody's experience and you say, wow, that's amazing, that wow is also kind of coupled with disbelief. And so hearing him talk about his own visions of Kali and the reason why he was in Dakshineshwar, that was the mystical India I had hoped to encounter. Speaking with people who are not believers, because a believer is like a blind faith kind of an individual, but people who are experienced in divine encounters and stuff like that. And the reason I say that I made my Temple Tours of India junk journal because of this man is that after the darshan, he came up to me while I was with my friends, the two people I was traveling with, and he folded his hands and made a request of me and said, I have to ask you to do something. And I said, okay. And I was getting a little nervous because, after all, I had been swindled by somebody else in Calcutta, which is nearby to Dakshineshwar. The last time somebody said they needed to ask me to do something, it was to pay 500 rupees for a tour from somebody who wasn't even a real tour guide. So don't get me wrong, it wasn't all positive encounters in India. Like, there's good with the bad. Or I should say there's bad with the good. But I kind of had a guard come up when he said that, but at the same time I was intrigued. So I said, okay, like what is it that you need to ask of me? And he said, when you get back to the West, please make a book about the deities and let people know that they're real. And so that's kind of been on my bucket list for years ever since then. And I just didn't see how my life could ever swing me into the direction to fulfill that request that this man made. I just don't see myself writing a book about deities, simply because I'm not a trained Vedic scholar. It's not like I can read Sanskrit. It's not like I've studied at a university level. I'm a great admirer of the people who do study Hinduism seriously and professionally. I mean, say what you will about Rajiv Malhotra's past support of the fraud who calls himself Nityananda. Say what you will about his ethics in supporting gurus who are found guilty of sexual crimes and embezzlement and other terrible things. I absolutely love his writing and his scholarly approach. If you're not sure who Rajiv Malhotra is, he wrote a book called Being Different, and it's basically an explanation of genuine belief in Hinduism while living in a culture that considers Christianity to be historical fact and Hinduism to be myth. I'm kind of oversimplifying it here, but Rajiv Ji, he goes into great detail describing the academic Hindu phobia prevalent in the Western university system. He breaks it down that if you look at Harvard or Princeton or Yale, like any of the Ivy League institutions, their religious programs always have people at the head who are practitioners of whichever religious department they're heading. So for example, Judaic studies will be headed by a rabbi. Christian theology will be headed by a Christian, either a priest or a minister. But those who teach non-Western religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism, 99% of the time, it's either an atheist who refers to it as, as a mythological history, or it's a Christian person who refers to it as a mythological history with a tinge of condescension. And this isn't just in academia, like this is also in pop culture. How many of you guys watch The Big Bang Theory? That's a guilty pleasure of mine. I love that show. It's freaking hilarious. There's a happening on that show where Sheldon Cooper's mom was talking to Raj Kutrapali and said something to him about the science fiction his people believe in. And of course, if you look at Hinduism, it's not just a spiritual history or a religious history. There's also a scientific history involved in Hinduism. The Vimanas, like the spacecraft, and the diagrams for how to achieve flight in the ancient past. Anyway, there's kind of a Western prejudice against any religion that we don't understand. And I absolutely, long story short, this is what I mean about these tangents I go off on that I don't really mean to. I wasn't even planning on mentioning Rajiv Malhotra in this video, but here we are. I don't see myself ever writing a book about deities because people like him, who have the credentials and who have the upbringing and the culture, who are steeped in the historical significance, are doing such a great job that my voice is not needed in that particular realm. And especially having been cheated by a fraudulent guru, I don't really see myself as a very credible advocate for the veracity of Sanatana Hindu Dharma at this point, because a lot of the things I believed about the tradition were taught to me by someone who lies, cheats, rapes, and steals. So I can only share my experiences, like the vision I had of Mahakali, and the genuinely wonderful sensations I had in various temples across India. Those are things that I still hold really dear to my heart. But as far as intellectual understanding goes, I'm just not really comfortable. So it's been on my mind a lot that I did make that commitment to this man, that I would make a book about deities and share with people in my culture that they are real. And of course, like nowadays, if somebody asked me something like that, I would probably say, you know what, I'm not that much of a writer, but I'll make a YouTube video about it. But guys, like this encounter happened in 2010, so it was over a year before I started this YouTube channel. And so I didn't have that idea. So when I was going through my trunk of souvenirs from India the other week, and I found all of those postcards with different deities on them and all the different little things I had collected in Indian temples, I just had that aha moment that, you know what, he didn't say I have to have a book published by, a major publishing house. He just told me to make a book about deities and share it. So that's what I did. I made my Temple Tours of India junk journal, shared it on this channel, listed it in my Etsy shop, and I kind of feel like I've fulfilled that request of his. So that was one of the great encounters I had in a Hindu temple. If you've never been to India or to a Hindu temple, like if the whole experience can't even be summed up in a YouTube video description of the experience. It's surreal. You'll be overwhelmed with the fragrance of incense and fruits and flowers and rotting dairy because of the abhishekams. And this could be my Western vegan prejudice, but I just don't like the smell of milk because I have been vegan for over 2 decades. So I didn't really like walking barefoot through the puddles of milk that were on the stone ground left over from the deity offerings. So it's not like I loved every minute of it. It was an overwhelming sensual experience as far as the sounds of the bells, and the pushing and shoving. Holy moly. If you ever want to experience getting very politely trampled, go to one of those temples, because there isn't a culture there of waiting politely in line. There's a culture there of light-hearted pushing and shoving. Like, nobody means any ill will by it. Nobody pushes and shoves out of spite or anger. It's just what happens. It's I think similar to how on Japanese trains there are people there who have to push the crowds to keep them moving. Only in India, it's not professional pushers. It's just every member of the general public will push you. And if you're a very sensitive person, like I was, I think India kind of broke me out of my shell in a lot of ways. But I was always really timid. From the time I was a kid, that, if there was a lineup, I would always go to the back of the line. And if somebody cut in front of me, I would let them, because that was easier than having an encounter, or, I've never been confrontational. So it's really a trip to be in India, and I had my preconceived notions going in that a temple would be a place of silent introspection and calm and composure, and that people would be sitting in Padmasana, meditating in front of the deity, and I just had a whole wrong inner concept of what the experience was going to be. So when I got there and discovered the reality, which is, like I said, friendly pushing and shoving, it was kind of shocking and off-putting. I didn't like the pushing and shoving. And I guess it took me like 6 or 7 years worth of back and forth travel before I was really used to it. And yeah, I still much prefer waiting patiently in line over pushing and shoving. I'll be the last one to get darshan, because if somebody pushes, I won't push back. I'll just kind of step aside. Anyway, so yeah, one of the people I met in India in a temple was that man who asked me to make a book about deities, and it was his request that inspired my last junk journal. Another person I met in a temple in India who had a really big influence on me. I'm sorry, do you guys hear all that honking in the background? There must be like a wedding procession or something. I have no idea what's going on out there. But yeah, another person, I can't even really say that I met her because she didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Tamil. But in the Arunachaleshwarar temple in Tiruvannamalai, there was an elderly woman dressed all in white, and unlike North American culture or European culture, where black is the mourning color, in Indian tradition, white is the color of mourning. So you'll see widows wearing white. There was an elderly widow just kind of sitting on the temple ground outside of the tank, like outside of the pool of water, like the traditional temple tank. And as soon as I saw her, I just felt this overwhelming emotion of sorrow for her. She just had this downcast expression. There was a begging bowl in front of her. Every once in a while, a passerby would drop a coin into it. And I remember hearing about the temple widows in India in one of the tourist brochures I had seen. And it's people who, widows whose husbands pass away and they don't have any family, they don't have anywhere else to go, they don't have anyone to take care of them. And yeah, I was really struck with this profound feeling of grief, like I was grieving along with her. So I walked up to where she was sitting, and I took, I don't remember how much money I took. I was traveling on a limited budget myself, so I would have loved to give her a huge amount of cash, like enough that she could feel safe again. But I didn't have a huge amount of cash, a life-changing amount. I think this is the kind of savior complex a lot of North Americans get when we travel to developing countries and see people who are living a level of poverty just unfathomable to us. I mean, here, like in Lethbridge, Alberta, where I live, even the most down on their luck homeless person can at least, apply for welfare, can at least go to a shelter to get a free meal and a night's sleep. They don't literally have to sleep in the street if they don't want to. It's really something else to see people in countries that don't have homeless shelters, that don't have hospice care for the elderly. So yeah, I guess we have that Western gaze when we see things like that. And especially the disparity, how I know people in India who are wealthy beyond my wildest dreams, whose houses are like palaces, who would never want for anything, who have servants to cook for them and clean up after them. And it's just such a striking contrast to see like the luxury of some of the 8-star hotels in Mumbai, the rich, lavish Bollywood adornment in the Mumbai airport, and there's a slum right next to it. If you ever want to see like the ultimate contrast, just fly into the Mumbai airport and look out the window on the right-hand side of the plane, if you're on the right side when you come in for a landing. And it's like there are luxury skyscrapers where, I'm not even shitting you, like every balcony in the building, so every condo in that place, every balcony has its own swimming pool. And the walls literally look like they're encrusted with gems. Like it is palatial, the way some of the wealthy there live. And yet right next to it, like separated, not even by a fence, separated by like a sheet of plastic, there's a slum where people are living in cardboard boxes and plastic tarps. It's just unimaginable. Anyway, this widow in the Tiruvannamalai temple, I didn't even know, I didn't plan anything. I just knew I had to give her some money. And when I think it was probably 500 rupees, and that's not a lot, that's like $10. when I put that bill in her bowl, she immediately reached out and touched my feet. And I just couldn't accept that. I couldn't allow this elderly lady who lives in one of the most sacred places in the world, who's gone through who knows what in life. I couldn't. I know it's part of the Indian culture to touch the feet of people you feel are giving you something or teaching you something, but I couldn't think that the $10 that I probably earned, in 1 hour of retail, that didn't qualify me to receive her gratitude. So I just immediately sat down on the ground and touched her feet too. And then she looked at me finally, because this lady, like I said, her eyes were downcast. She wasn't looking at anyone. It's just so sad when somebody doesn't feel that they count in life, so they don't even try to make human contact. They don't even try to look at you. So finally she looked at me and her eyes just filled with tears. And I reached and I hugged her, and she put her head on my shoulder and she sobbed so much, like her whole body was shaking. And I had this feeling that probably nobody had hugged her in who knows how many years. It was just really profound. And of course I started crying too. That was, I would say, the most touching experience I had in all of my trips to India. And afterwards, there were lots of sadhus in that temple as well. When my friends who were exploring other parts of the temple came up to me, and basically said it was time we had to go. We were on a tight schedule. We had a train to catch. They each gave her a couple of bills as well. But that was when I realized it's not everyone who feels the suffering of others along with them. I guess that's what an empath is, right? When you see somebody who's suffering and you feel that same suffering. And I kind of feel like I left a part of myself with that elderly lady that day, because I didn't want to leave her. I wished I could have brought her with us, or like I said, it's that feeling of not being able to do enough. And there were a few beggars in India who I had that same kind of a feeling with. But she was the first. And like I said, she had the most tremendous impact on how I felt. The next one I wanted to share, as I'm talking, I'm remembering other places I went. So in Pondicherry, there's a Ganesha temple that we were told was one of the oldest temples to Lord Ganesha in India. And of course we had to go. So I think that day we had more time because we actually booked a motel room overnight in Pondicherry, which was one of my favorite places just because it's so beautiful. With the Bay of Bengal, the beaches, the nightlife. Usually in India, there's no partying going on at night. Well, with the exception of Goa, where I've never been, so I can only speak for the places I've visited. But in Pondicherry, along the coast at night, it's kind of like going to the fair, only without the rides. There are vendors selling these they're bright light up spinning tops on a string, and when you pull a little ripcord, they sail up into the air like little tiny propellers, like little helicopters. I don't know what those toys are called, but people are selling little light up toys, and it's just a lot of fun. So when we were in that Ganesha temple in Pondicherry, I know why. One of my friends really wanted to go into the Oroville, like, crystal chamber, lotus-shaped meditation room. I had never heard of it before. He told me about it as we were traveling. My other friend, she really wanted to go in there too. And so that's why we booked a night for overnight in Pondicherry. Unfortunately, you have to book like a few months in advance because the demand is huge to go into that meditation chamber. That's on my bucket list. If I ever go back to India again, which I probably won't because the cult is after me. But if I were to say like which things I'd love to do in India that I didn't get a chance to do, that's one of them. So anyway, we're in the Ganesha temple. My friends are going to, I think, like, there's no real gift shops, but there was a little bazaar outside of it. They wanted to look at clothes because all they had were the things that we wore in the program. So I had my sketchbook and I sat down and started to draw. In fact, holy crap, how synchronistic is this? This was one of the drawings in that exact sketchbook that I had with me that day. And after I drew it, somebody pointed out that this kind of looks like Ganesha, which was totally unintentional because if you're one of my regular viewers, you know that my drawings are abstract, unplanned, non-representational. They're kind of like stream of consciousness. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of cool. It was from this very sketchbook. And an older lady approached me who was coming out from seeing the deity, and she looked over my shoulder at what I was drawing, and she said, "It's so wonderful to see a youth from the West engaged in traditional Vedic arts." And I hadn't met anybody yet in India who was an art enthusiast. Nobody in the ashram where I had stayed had paid any attention really to my drawings, except for the kids who would come up to me with their pens and have me draw in their hands, kind of like henna but in pen ink. That was kind of cute. But yeah, she was the first person to tell me that my art was traditional Vedic art. And I asked her what she meant, and she took me to a spot in that Ganesha temple where one of the archways in the building was kind of carved with these inscribed paisley-like patterns, but that weren't geometrically symmetrical. They were kind of random and kind of abstract. And she said that when she was growing up, her parents had pointed out that spot to her and told her that the ancient artists would tune in with existence and just let the forms flow through. And she saw that in the art that I was doing, and it really confirmed for me that my art is a channeling of something beyond me, that it's not just me expressing myself through lines and dots and forms, that there's something more mystical going on, something more of a connection to existence that's coming through. And yeah, I definitely walked across the street with her and made her some Xerox copies of my art. There are Xeroxes of my drawings all over India, because anytime somebody commented that they liked them, I would make them prints. So anyhow, I think I've drawn as much as I want to draw on this. Like, as you can see from the other junk journal I've got here, the back, this will be the back of this next book I'm making. I stuck down a photocopy. This is a photocopy of one of my drawings, like I said, from that Indian sketchbook. I coffee dyed the paper. I put some brown ink around the torn edges to give it that distressed antique-y look. I did the same thing for the drawing on the cover, so I'll probably do something similar with this one. Only I'm kind of thinking I want to give this next junk journal I'm making a theme. I'm leaning towards feathers and birds and butterflies. Bear with me, when it's finished that'll probably make more sense. But yeah, this flap will be decorated with something. The book will open like this. The pages will be sewn into the middle. As I've said in recent videos, I have really gotten into paper crafting and started binge watching channels that do junk journals. So that's what influenced me to do this one. And I just love being able to incorporate art into craft. There's such a stigma in the fine arts community that looks down on anything utilitarian, like pottery. Pottery, which is a useful vessel compared to a sculpture that's just ornamental and doesn't serve a utilitarian purpose. Art that is meant to be exhibited, displayed, and put on a wall versus art that adorns a book that somebody will use as a journal and keep things in and turn the pages of. There's such a stigma. I got into this channel on YouTube that it's called Art in America, and I think it was originally a PBS series where they profile crafters. Sorry, not Art in America, Craft in America. If I said it wrong the first time, I'm correcting myself now. And there was a lady that they interviewed in that series who makes these exquisite quilts. And she described that when she went to fine arts school, for one of their assignments, they had to do something that drew on the history of culture, of their personal culture, and expressed that in a two-dimensional way. So, like mixed media techniques you could do to describe your culture, to show your culture, could be any kind of collage, any kind of painting, any kind of drawing, something like a lithograph or a print. What she decided to do was make a quilt to hang on the wall because her mother, her grandmother, her great-grandmother, as far back as she could trace, were all quilters. And so she made this crazy, amazing quilt that included scenes from her historical family tree, and that also included other mixed media elements like decoupage and collage, and she painted in some panels on it. And she described that in the critique, her teacher and her peers just ripped that quilt to shreds. Not literally, they didn't destroy her art, but they destroyed her sense of accomplishment in having made it. And after the class, her teacher pulled her aside and actually had the audacity to tell her that a quilt is not art, it's just a piece of folk craft. And she said that when she had first made that quilt, she was only thinking conceptually, what's a two-dimensional work that's something unique that draws on family tradition, that shows our culture. She didn't mean for it to be like she wasn't setting out to rock the boat or to, stick it to the system or to make a political statement about craft versus art, but that the stigma attached to craft compared to so-called fine art was so emotionally jarring that became her motivation, and she became a professional quilter. That became her preferred medium, just because she loves that tactile quality of the fabrics, and she loved that feeling of making something that for centuries was kind of like completely ignored by the art community. If you open any art history textbook, um, I would be willing to bet money, unless it's something published within the last, say, 20 years by a more feministically inclined publisher, any art history textbook you open, 90% of the content will be paintings, drawings, and sculptures made by men. You won't see woven baskets or hand stitched clothing or embroidered linens or needlepoint or quilts, or the things that were considered women's crafts. And so by making that quilt and by getting that unexpected emotional reaction by her teacher, this lady kind of stumbled into a discovery of one of the prejudices in the art community, that something that has been made by the great majority of women in our culture historically. I mean, my grandma quilts, your grandma probably either made a quilt once in her life, or her grandma did, or she had friends who quilt, or maybe she crochets or knits or something. That line between art and craft, it's something that can get easily blurred. Last weekend, I brought my temple tour of India junk journal over to my grandmom's house on Sunday. I get together with her every Sunday, and I showed it to her. I thought she might be interested, because usually she'll show me the sewing projects or the crafts that she's working on. She's very crafty. I think that's where I get it from. Like when I was a kid and I would go over to visit her, she always had a craft ready for us to do, whether it was origami or polymer clay jewelry making. The first time I ever made a piece of jewelry was with my grandma. We wove ribbons, we pressed flowers, we made our own paper. That handmade paper by creating a paper pulp and pressing it with water into a screen. Like, she had the greatest range to keep a kid entertained in a way that was productive. My grandma's awesome. Anyway, I showed her that temple tour of India junk journal, and she shared with me a junk journal that her mother had made in the 1930s. It's like, this piece is probably the most precious family heirloom I've ever seen, just because of the love and craft and creativity that went into it. It was made out of the cardboard from cereal boxes, or that kind of cardboard, bound together with binder rings and stitched with like a yarn kind of a stitch. Like the binding was yarn stitched, and it was filled with newspaper and magazine cutouts, and like, it was just so obviously made with love. And on the front cover, there's a picture of my grandma when she was 5 years old on her 5th birthday, with a birthday cake in front of her and that exact book leaning up against the chair she was sitting on. So it's kind of cool. It's like a thing within a thing. There's a picture of her with the book on the book. And she showed me another book my great-grandmother had made that I took pictures of the whole thing. I'm thinking of printing them out and including them in a junk journal at some point in the future. We'll see. I'm still kind of thinking through the logistics of how I can do that properly. But it's bound together using the cardstock that was the cover of a pattern, like a sewing pattern for dressmaking. And that was the one that was binder rings holding it together. And each page has like a little 2-inch sample of a crochet border. And every single one of them is different. Like, there are at least, I didn't count them, but like 4 of them per page, and there's about 10 pages, so I guess about 40 different borders. And my grandma said she didn't get these stitch designs out of any book, or nobody taught her those particular stitches. That's how she would get creative. She would make up her own patterns for doilies, for lace, for edging on blankets and napkins and things. And so I had this aha moment where, my love for doing, I would call this a doodle as opposed to something like this that's a drawing, but where I doodle the border on a book like this. Nobody taught me, this little pattern of interconnected circles with little rays coming out from them, or a spiral capped by another spiral with little dots going around it. Like, that's something it just comes out of me. It's not planned. Much like those ancient carvers who did the archway in that temple in Pondicherry, and also much like my great granny Sarah, who would come up with these borders for doilies. Just, it's like jazz music where there's no notes on a page in front of you or planned composition. It just comes out. I suddenly saw how that's something innate in all of us. Some people will get creative like that while cooking, and instead of following a recipe to the letter, they know which kind of spices can get thrown in to change the flavor in a complementary way. Some people get creative like that doing their nails. Like, holy shit, don't look closely at my cuticles in these videos because I paint my nails colors, but I'm not good at it. But I've known girls like my friend Natalia from Vancouver. When she would do her nails, like, I remember once, and here I am getting sidetracked into a whole unrelated topic again, but she once embedded little teeny tiny seashells into her gel nails. And, stuff like that blows my mind because I wouldn't have ever thought to do that. But anyway, everyone gets creative in some way or another. And I really think it's a fascinating area of exploration to see where historically, in times when women weren't allowed admittance into universities or into the academy, into apprenticeships with great master artists, they made do with what they had available to them. So, okay, women were allowed to sew clothes for their husband and their kids, and that was their unpaid job without thanks. But they could take the scraps from those and make crazy quilts, and that's how they could express their creativity with the limited supplies available to them. Women might not have been allowed to get trained classically as chefs, but they could come up with recipes that would get passed down from generation to generation. It's, ever since watching the movie The Glorias, about Gloria Steinem's life, I've been thinking more and more about gender roles historically and what was and what wasn't allowed to women. And it's funny, I never really thought of myself as a feminist before. And when people would talk about women in the arts and women getting acceptance as fine artists, as visual artists, as professional, credible artists, I thought of some of my Emily Carr professors who were feminists, and the whole concept really turned me off because, one of them made a painting where the canvas was stained with her period blood. There's that infamous feminist artist in the States who filled a gallery with dirty panties suspended from the ceiling and turned off the air conditioner and blew fans downwards from above so people had to smell that stench. I fucking hate that shit. Like, you couldn't pay me to go into that gallery of putrid panties. Like, you couldn't pay me to touch that canvas stained with her. Like, that's disgusting to me. But an artist making a quilt as a statement of her historical creative roots and showing, like, the cottage industry way in which women would express themselves artistically with whatever limited training and limited means they had available. that to me is real feminist art. I see that as much more powerful and profound, because any woman who wants to express herself, who has sewing materials, can do it and would want to do it and would be proud to share it, and hopefully in the future that line will get even more blurred between art and craft. So on that note, I'll finally, there are more people I met in temples in India that I'd like to talk about. I think I'll talk about more of them in future videos. I'm specifically thinking of these two gorgeous, talented Bollywood actresses who I met in Mumbai. I'm not going to name drop. I'm not going to tell you their names because they really valued their privacy, and when my mom and I were with them, they asked us not to post their pictures on Instagram or show that we were with them, but we spent an incredible 4 days as their guests, and my mom says that was her favorite part. Like, of all the traveling we did in India, that was her number one favorite, because it was so nice to just not think about where we're going to go and what we're going to do, but to have people plan those 4 days for us. Like, they put us up in a nice hotel. My mom ordered room service once and insisted, like, please take my credit card and charge this to me. And the man said to her, like, no, like, we were given very strict instruction. Anything that you want, it's already taken care of. So, like, we got the star treatment, really. But yeah, those sisters had some incredible temple stories that they shared with me. One of their aunts also shared some really cool experiences with Kali for me. Yeah, there was this actor from Hollywood who I met at the Kumbh Mela, who I didn't even know who he was when we were spending time together. I was given the instruction by the cult I was in to basically be his tour guide, like to take him around the Kumbh Mela camp, to show him the deities, to answer all of his questions. And because security there was such a ridiculous issue, I kind of had to be his babysitter. Like, they told me, don't let him take pictures of anything, don't let him bring his camera here. It was messed up. Like, I felt like such a, how do I put it? Like the enforcer of arbitrary rules. But luckily he was a good sport about it. Anyway, like, I'd love to share more about that experience. So I think I'm going to take that topic of people I met in India, like good people I met in India, and put that aside for a future video. Right now I want to share this junk journal, the latest piece that I added to my Etsy shop, Art of Gems Stationery, just because I really love how this one turned out. I'm going to glue this down a bit better. But anyway, yeah, it's made out of 2 envelopes, like the 2 blue ones I was just drawing on now. I decorated the cover by drawing this doodled border. The inside flap of this envelope, I used just a page full of stickers, only instead of cutting out the stickers individually, I left it totally intact as it was and just cut it to the shape of the envelope. Because this had that kind of glue that you lick and stick, I was afraid that if it ever had water spilled on it or something, or if somebody buys it and it gets a little humid, that this would stick to the next page. So I just painted that with gold paint to deactivate that adhesive. And then I just made it into a junk journal. I filled it up. So since it's made of an envelope, this envelope flap is still a useful pocket. I put something in here that I got these from an Etsy shop from France. There's a girl who just goes to antique shops and buys all the papers So it's a car, like an automobile manufacturer's receipt from the 6th Avril 1933. So April 6th, 1933. And I keep thinking, like, that was before my grandparents were born. My grandparents were born in June. My granddad in June of 1933. My grandmom in September of 1933. So it's like, I bought that set of antique French things specifically to include in junk journals like this, so that each one has a historic treasure within it. And then, like, my inner treasure hoarding dragon monster just wants to keep them all for myself because they're so freaking cool that I don't want to, give them away. But no, I bought them to use in junk journals, so whoever buys this journal gets that car automotive receipt from 1933. And you can either keep it as it is or give it away, write on it, draw on it, use it, but it's just so cool. The reason I love junk journals so much, I don't get that feeling of tingles that some people get when they hear paper or whispers. Like, I don't get the ASMR effect, but I still love, and this might sound silly, but I love the smell of books. And it comes from when I was growing up, my grandparents' basement had, I think, 10, maybe 11 bookshelves, the big tall kind, filled with books. My granddad was an avid reader. He subscribed to, like, back in the day before Kindle, people would get these catalogs of books, and it was like a monthly subscription where you fill out on the card which books you want. It was kind of like, they subscribed to Reader's Digest, so they got those books every month, but they also got new releases. So anyway, yeah, my family house, my grandparents' house that I'd go to every week was kind of a little library in the basement. And I used to love opening a book and smelling the pages. Now, don't judge me. Everyone has their thing. But I love the smell of antique paper and of old books. There's just it's like the scent of knowledge. And you don't get that from a MacBook or from an iPhone or from a Kindle. I love the smell of paper. Here we go again, a thing I didn't ever think I'd be talking about in a YouTube video, but here's my confession. I love the feeling of different kinds of papers. I love touching them. I love flipping through books. Anyway, and I think anybody who would buy a junk journal probably has that same appreciation for the diversity of papers, the different weights, the different textures, that crinkly feeling. So yeah, from now on, every junk journal I make is going to have one piece of antique French ephemera. I also kind of collaged this inside cover with a piece of coffee dyed lined paper that I kind of tore to that, roughly that shape. And I left it totally plain, so whoever buys this junk journal can use this as a journaling space, like maybe write down what your goals and intentions are for keeping this book. It could be a grocery list even. What I usually use my little books for is to keep a list of ideas for YouTube videos. I speak really spontaneously. I don't script anything. But when somebody leaves a comment under one of my videos that really speaks to me, that I would like to address, I write down that comment in one of my journals. I used to keep a little paper blanks book filled just with YouTube comments. And like, if you used to watch my old videos, like I'm talking 6-7 years ago videos, you'd see me hold up this little book with Ganesha on the cover and read people's comments out loud before answering them. So anyway, that, if you're a YouTuber, a junk journal would be a great place to keep video ideas. Anyhow, What I love about envelope cover journals is the extra pocket space. So I took that a step further and added one more envelope here with just a blank card in it that can be collaged on or written on or journaled on or removed completely and something else can go in that pocket. I used a lot of pretty stickers to decorate it. And this, it's a vintage French stamp that has like a fairy tale castle on it, and I just love castles. So I went with that theme and put this. This isn't a real postcard, this is a photocopy I made, of a color copy I should say, of a postcard I bought from that same French antique shop. The shop is called Pardon My French. So if you're also into these vintage papers and you'd like to get your hands on some French ephemera, but you don't want to pay for one of the journals I make, if you just want the straight paper goods, that's where I bought them. And I put a little destination. I used a rubber stamp on this. Like I said, I've gotten really into the paper crafts. And yeah, and the back cover is also decorated with an extra envelope pocket. I love this envelope because the lining is so gorgeous. And I included this, just a blank peacock card. So that comes with the journal. And then the signature, like the papers that actually make up the journal. You can see how fragile this is. I'm going to push that back in before any more of it crumbles. The signature the journal is made out of includes this decorative paper that can be left blank, or you can stick stuff to it, stick a photo to it, use it for collaging. I put this sticker that I made. This is a matte sticker, not a glossy sticker. One of the other latest items in my new Etsy stationery shop is chakra gem stickers. So amethyst, tanzanite, aquamarine, peridot, citrine, this gorgeous orange sapphire, and ruby. Those gems correspond to the crown chakra, the third eye, the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, the sacral chakra, and the root. And I just love the way the colors look together. So before I made the vinyl stickers, I printed out a sheet on just matte, the cheaper kind of sticker paper. And when I finished putting this junk journal together, these colors on this little paper here just reminded me of that. So I kind of put them together. This is my favorite page I'm about to flip to. This is a coloring sheet with a mandala. And on the other side, I put these paper doilies because they also have that mandala look. So there's 4 layers of doilies. Like I said, it's a girly, feminine kind of a craft, but I just find it very aesthetically pleasing. The black on white and then the white on black. Then we've got some dot grid paper, some coffee dyed paper. This is actually a piece of wrapping paper, Art Forms in Nature, and it's a pocket, so you can put something in there. I will tuck some little gifts for whoever buys this into the pocket. Grid paper, solid color paper, more coffee dyed paper, more dot grid, another grid. I went with a lot of plain papers because since it is a junk journal, I love this tracing paper. Since it is a junk journal, the intention is for somebody to use it for writing, drawing, doodling, collaging. This is another really special page. My Auntie Marilyn went to university. She majored in art and education. And so right before I went to art school at the Emily Carr University of Art, like a couple of years before, she gave me her old art theory textbook so I could kind of study up a bit. And she had a bunch of pages torn out of it. She had taken out like any of her favorite paintings she had cut out of the book with X-Acto knives to frame and to put up in her place. So the book, it wasn't a precious book. It wasn't a book that Like it was falling apart at the seams. There was stuff written, like notes about exams written on some of the pages. So I felt no problem at all tearing pages out of it to use in a junk journal. And that's what these are. This one I just love for a journal because it's the color wheel. So whoever gets it, like you could color in all of these colors to get the color theory, or just keep it. Yeah, and then the center of the page is this old Dutch masters painting that you could either keep it as it is or collage over it, or just rip it out if you don't like it. That's the fun of a junk journal, is that you can just do with it whatever you want. There's a YouTube channel I got into recently called Treasure Books, where a lovely lady makes junk journals like this. I left a couple paper scraps in there just because they wound up in there, and I thought, instead of cleaning up all of those bits, other people like me who like to use all of the scraps might be inspired to do something with them. But anyway, yeah, this lady who has Treasure Books, she makes junk journals as well. And she said that when she first got into journaling, she was really intimidated by a blank page. Like if she saw a white page in front of her, she didn't know where to start, like how to begin the drawing, what to put on it, what to write on it. She didn't want to kind of wreck it. But if she saw a page like this, she could easily just start writing around the forms that were there. Or like with something like this, you could connect the dots and draw little geometric figures onto it. It's like when there's already a print or a pattern on the page, it's easier to just get in there with your pen and pencil and start doing things for some people. Personally, I love a blank white page. As you've seen, if you've seen my Draw With Me videos, I have no problem tackling a white page and just going for it with my drawings or with my writing. But some people like having a little prompt. Yeah, and then this is how it closes. As you can see, the golden string wraps around it. I've got these beads from India that I used as dangling tassels, and yeah, that's it. And like I said, it combines the worlds of art and of craft, because I feel that the pictures I used on the cover, these drawings of mine, are art. Even the doodled borders here, that's my art. And then binding a book, doing the pamphlet stitch, attaching the beads, that's craft. And so I just love these kinds of things that straddle the border between arty and crafty. Anyway, and yeah, like I said, I can quickly show you some of the pages I've set aside for the next junk journal I plan on making. And they're similar but different. The old me would have gotten this page and hoarded it because I love the color blue. I think blue, purple, and green, the cool colors are my favorites. But this combination of blues especially. But I personally get the most fun out of making things more than having them. It might sound strange, but for me, like the fun of the junk journal is in making it. So anyway, this is that, similar to the paper I showed in my temple tour of India journal. It's scrapbook paper from Woolworth's department store in the 1960s. I decided to go with a black and a white paper doily for that similar mandala looking contrast. And yeah, when it comes to actually binding this book, another art theory about space and proportions and ratios, this gorgeous marble texture paper scrap. Anyway, when it comes to actually binding this book, and then the centerfold are these ballerinas, which I just love. When it comes to actually binding this together, I'll cut the pages down so that they fit into here the same way like On this one, I cut them all down to an even size. Anyway, I hope this doesn't bore you. Obviously, if you've watched an hour and 9 minutes of this, you're probably like me. You're probably interested in this kind of stuff. And here's another nitpicky little thing. I don't like it when books are left loose like that, so I personally would pull the string tightly, wrap the beads around the back, and then drag them so that they dangle right here. This is, to me, how it looks the most finished when they're hanging at the open side. But yeah, if you're like me, you're probably into this kind of stuff too. So hopefully you're enjoying these newer videos of mine where I'm sharing paper crafts instead of just drawing. But let me know in the comments if a lot of people, and by a lot, let's be realistic here, not that many of you comment on my videos. Usually I'll be lucky if I get 30 comments, but if like 5 of you would prefer it for me to just draw the way I've been doing for the past year or so, like just draw and talk and stop sharing all of my crafts, just let me know. Like I can be flexible about this. I enjoy doing both. But if you're also interested and you like seeing the junk journals, let me know, and I'll keep including flip throughs and showing you my finished pieces in final videos. And if you're into jewelry, let me know too, because of course my other thing is making jewelry, like the bracelets I'm always wearing. I'd be more than happy to start doing more of a show and tell about the jewelry pieces I make for my original Etsy shop, The Art of Gems. Just let me know what you want. I'll cater my videos to all of your preferences as much as possible. Just don't ask me to do anything improper. But yeah, any topic you'd like to hear me talk about, I'm pretty open. Don't ask me to talk more about the cult though. There are some people who comment on all of my videos asking for more dirt on the fraud who calls himself Nityananda, and it's like, guys, I've been out of that for almost 2 years now. Everything, all the shit that I experienced in it that I had to share, I've already shared. And I just don't see a point in rehashing all of it all over again. So for those who are interested in following his illegal journey, evading his rape case in India, like, Google it. That's what the Indian media is there to expose. Like, there are other people out there continuously talking about him. I kind of feel like my work there is done. But when it comes to arts, crafts, drawing, stories about my experiences in India unrelated to the cult, the actual deities, spirituality, my evolution into a crazy cat lady because of the COVID restrictions, and how I'm basically just housebound and spend my days talking to my cats in such a way that the neighbors probably think I'm a crazy lady. Like, ask me about that fun stuff, and I look forward to opening up and sharing more. Anyway, thank you to everyone who watched. Thank you, Jacqueline, for the goodies. You probably saw that sticker you gave me on my journal page I used as a backdrop for today's video. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who has bought something from my Etsy shops, whether jewelry or stationery goodies from the Art of Gems stationery. I really appreciate the support, especially during this pandemic times. Like, it has hit the artisan community pretty hard, because when people are low on funds due to all the restrictions right now, you know, people who have had their work hours cut back, people who have lost their jobs, like, oh, my heart breaks for anyone who opened a vegan restaurant in the last couple of years, because damn, like, nobody saw this coming, that people won't be able to go out and eat in restaurants anymore. But yeah, when people lose a major source of their revenue, the first thing that gets cut from the budget is jewelry and and fun handmade things. Like you prioritize food, clothing, shelter. So a lot of us who have gone all in to make a living doing what we love and who have started small businesses, eek, like this year has been kind of a crunch. Maybe some people, the people who make masks have seen a huge profit spike, but those of us who make more luxury items like jewelry and like hand bound books, it's not a good fiscal year. So yeah, like I'm saying, those of you who have supported my shops, thank you so much. And if you mention seeing my video when you buy anything, whether it's a piece of jewelry or a junk journal, or even if you just buy a single postcard or a sticker from one of my shops, just mention seeing the video and I will include some extra special little gifts for you. Let me know what you're into. If you're into, outer space, I might throw in like a wax seal that you can use as a sticker that shows a little UFO landing over the pyramids. Or if you're into, gemstones, maybe I'll throw in one of those chakra stickers like the one I showed you in this book. Just it'll be something personalized and fun. But the way I love to give back when people support my creative businesses is by, throwing in that personal touch. And you may have noticed, if you've bought something from me recently, that I've kind of stepped up my game a little bit when it comes to creative packaging. And instead of just using a bubble mailer, I started using washi tape. I'm just gonna grab the nearest roll. Washi tape, which is this like decorative kind of masking tape. I've been using it to decorate my envelopes, kind of wrapping up an envelope like a gift, using it like ribbon and putting on stickers and stuff. So yeah, because I've had fewer orders than in previous years, I spend more time on each order and try to give it that really creative personal touch. And so yeah, and if you also have an Etsy shop or a small business, let me know in the comments below and I will go check out your shop and favorite your items and hopefully help drive some more traffic your way as well. Like, we are all in this together. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. And yeah, my prayers that you will be successful and affluent and healthy and happy despite the craziness of this pandemic. And yeah, until next time, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.